On May 18, 1969, at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, Apollo 10 stood ready on pad 39B. It was the work of 400,000 people and would carry 3 of them to the moon, 2 of them within 9 miles of its surface, the closest man had ever been. Flight that had to be made before others could safely land. By 10 a.m., Thomas Stafford, John Young, and Eugene Cernan were ready and received an affectionate send-off from an upstart beagle from a comic strip. Snoopy, a pilot himself and longtime mascot of the Apollo Quality Control Program, really deserved to go along. Anyway, he was there in spirit and in name, and throughout the complex and difficult mission, good humor prevailed. A mood which the world shared. A good thing to have when you're out there alone, 250,000 miles from home.
Seconds and counting. Guidance internal. 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9. We have ignition sequence start. Engines on.
Spaceflight seems to express extremes of every sort. An inferno below, a blizzard of ice above. Overpowering thrust contrasting with seeming reluctance to go. Seconds and 280 tons of fuel later, the rocket cleared the pad. Launch directors found that they had been within 7,000ths of a second of their planned time for liftoff. It was going well.
1 minute,
right on time, right on target.
12 miles high.
In Houston, the flight controllers breezed through Earth orbit and injection towards the moon with deceptive ease and calm. The 3 astronauts had been very active in getting color TV put aboard and were determined to share their experience in space.
Hey, we got the color now. Okay, I'll try to adjust it for you. Yes, sir. It's looking great. No sweat. We got it right in the center of the screen, Gene. It looks like the sun's really bright on it. Tremendous.
In the first transmission, they brought virtually the entire world into their cabin to witness their first critical maneuvers, separation and docking with the lunar module.
Roger. Ken, it's looking real stable to us. We show you closing tightly. in a second, I hope. Roger. We're there. Got 2 crates. Roger. You saw the docket, Charlie. Good, master alarm. Everything looks snug.
Apollo 10 had a rugged flight plan. It combined the features of the 9 flights before it and was a full dress rehearsal for the infinitely complicated lunar landing to follow. Fortunately, between the Earth and the Moon, there's a long coast with some time to unwind after liftoff and subsequent maneuvers. This gives the astronauts an opportunity to adjust to a weightless environment in which there is no up or down, no sunrise or sunset, and no one else around. In the second color telecast, the 3 astronauts introduced their 2 stowaways, Snoopy and his pal Charlie Brown.
Good grief, Charlie Brown. Now you're going to bring on that whizzer here. Okay, we got Snoopy now. Well, he's been quiet for 2 days. He's going to get a chance to do a little woofing here in the next couple days. Roger, we noticed the resemblance there, too.
Snoopy wearing...
I didn't know Tom had a big nose like that.
On TV and in onboard motion pictures, the crew appeared deceptively idle. For the average viewer, the astronauts' humor and their relaxed appearance tended to obscure the 8 days of intense concentration. On they sailed. By Tuesday morning, May 20th, they were 150,000 miles from home and would soon be feeling the pull of the moon's gravity. At that point, their speed would increase from a low of 2,500 miles per hour. On Earth, at 1/2 mile per hour, Apollo 11 had started its journey to the moon. In test facilities and simulation chambers, the crew of Apollo 11 continued the exacting and intense training which had already filled their lives for so many months. Edwin Aldrin, lunar module pilot. Neil Armstrong, spacecraft commander, the one slated to be the first man to set foot on the moon. Michael Collins, command module pilot. The training goes on, suit tests and previews of their hardware. Simulated lunar gravity training, underwater and in the air. The role of lunar landing might have fallen to any of the astronaut crews. It might even have been the crew of Apollo 10. As it is, the burden of reality, the excitement of what is almost unreality, has been given to these 3. Meanwhile, the Apollo 10 trajectory was so accurate that 3 of the 4 mid-course corrections were skipped. On the 4th day, 74 hours into the flight, a precise burst of the main engine put them into orbit around the moon. another burst, using only a few ounces of fuel, fired at just the right instant for a precise length of time, made their orbit nearly circular at 69 miles, and they prepared for descent in the lunar module. Astronauts Stafford, Young, and Cernan became the second group of 3 to see this sight, and they were the first with the potential to see it from a point 60 miles closer than it appears in this scene. It was a prime objective of Apollo 10 to duplicate the Apollo 11 flight plan in every way: the timing, spacecraft performance, the performance of men and equipment on Earth. The only minor difference would come now. This is their lunar track as it was displayed in the control room at Houston. And this is the view they had from the command module, looking past the thrusters of the lunar module.
Jack, you're looking at some of those depressions that go right through some of the craters now, and they're very flat, and where they're shallow, we can see right to the bottom of them.
Now it was time for Stafford and Cernan to crawl through the connecting tunnel. Right away there were problems. While Houston and the world waited, they finally solved a pressure problem in the tunnel and fixed a radar system defect. Then there was an unexplained twisting in the docking collar, but it didn't get worse. As they disappeared behind the moon for the 11th time, they were still together. When they next appeared, they were 50 feet apart, flying formation. John Young radioed his companions below. "You'll never know how big this thing gets when there ain't nobody in here but one guy." And they answered, "You'll never know how small it looks when you're as far as we are." Here in the lunar environment, as Apollo 9 had done in Earth's environment, the crew was able to check out the lunar module's landing radar, navigation, and guidance systems. They were also proving out the descent rocket, an engine which can be throttled like an ordinary car. The reflection in the window comes from the astronaut's sleeves as he took the pictures.
Down among us, Charlie. Roger, I hear you weaving your way up the freeway.
The waterless sea of tranquility was their target, and the descent orbit swept them in lower and lower for the first pass over landing site number 2. This is a preview of what the crew of the Apollo 11 will see when they head in for lunar landing. Apollo 10 made the same run at the same angle under the same lighting conditions. Only shortly after splashdown, this film was being used by the 11 crew in the lunar landing simulators in Houston. That's a characteristic of all photography in space. The pictures one sees in print and on television are actually there as a bonus, for the primary purpose is most often scientific, and there are dozens of experts in many fields impatient for prints the moment a spacecraft returns to Earth. In the science of geology, there is disagreement over the formation of the moon's surface. Some believe it is the result of volcanoes, some say meteors, some say both. In this scene, the altitude is 9 miles, not much more than that of a commercial jet. But the clarity of detail is far greater, since there are no clouds or haze, and no gases acting as distorting filters. As the crew told Mission Control, it looks so close. All you have to do is to put your tail wheels down, and you're there. They were close, all right, within 50,000 feet. a level at which the command module could still have come down and rescued them if necessary. One more burn of the descent engine, and they would indeed have been right down among it.
Sample is sample number 12. And,
here on a mock lunar surface in a hangar at Houston, the Apollo 11 landing crew is practicing with equipment and drilling in procedures for that fast approaching day.
Sample number 13 is a vesicular but rhyolitic looking basalt.
Into this pocket over Neil Armstrong's knee will go the so-called contingency sample, the one that guarantees that something will be brought back even if they leave in a hurry. During the actual mission, every sample will be described and photographed. The crinkly material on the outside of the lunar module is for protection against extremes in temperature. By pulling a lanyard, they open the panel protecting the two scientific experiments which they will leave behind. One is a battery of reflectors which will bounce back laser beams from Earth. The second is a moonquake detector. These panels will collect energy from the sun and keep the batteries charged. Next, they will take bulk samples of the lunar soil. In this training session, just sawdust, the lightness of which may help them adjust to the expected workload in lunar gravity, which is 1/6 that of Earth gravity.
Reflect the characteristics of the lunar surface that we see. That is, certainly bring back...
The bulk samples are sealed in return containers, better known as rock boxes.
Surface and concentrate on those types of...
At the end of 22 hours, 2.5 of them working outside the lunar module, the Apollo 11 landing crew will blast off from the surface of the moon, leaving the descent stage where it landed. Apollo 10, however, now sweeping into the second pass over the prime landing site, slightly lower still, had only to separate from the descent stage and move up to rendezvous with the command ship. It did not start well. The backup guidance system apparently did not function properly. The spacecraft took a sudden and unexpected 180-degree turn. The astronauts took over manual control and stabilized the lunar module in 8 seconds. After a few missed heartbeats, the ascent continued smoothly, and the crew was amply compensated by the sheer beauty of the ride. During the maneuvers that followed, the crew proved out the LEM's rendezvous radar at its maximum range, 350 miles. Fixed cameras were running in both spacecraft as they slowly closed together. docking, the ascent stage of the lunar module was released. Its work was finished. It glided off toward orbit around the sun. Even farther below, they could see the descent stage continuing to circle the moon. The big day was finished. A whole string of new firsts had been added to the books. Things looked good for a lunar landing, but there was still the homeward leg to think about. During the 2-day coast to Earth, there was time to reflect on some of the small achievements, along with the big ones. For example, life on board was enormously improved over other Apollo flights. The food was better. The schedule permitted them to take their meals and rest periods all at the same time. They used to be staggered, as had sleep periods. And most important to the crew, there were no instances of motion sickness or colds or intestinal disease. One reason for this might have been the special exercises planned before the flight. Head movements to avoid nausea, tumbling to help adjust to weightlessness. Altogether, the crowded space seemed very comfortable, and spirits were right up to the level at which the flight began.
That we felt very strong about as we show you our last telecast here of the Earth is that we felt very strong about sharing with you some of the adventure, the excitement, the challenges, and the rewards of these 8 days. And through this endeavor, we hope that we've made you and millions of people of the world more of a part of the history that's being made in our day and age.
And so from the 5 of us, Gene Cernan, John Young, Tom Stafford, Snoopy, and Charlie Brown, we'd just like to say goodbye, and we'll see you get back on the water in the South Pacific. In fact, we should land about 300 miles east of Samoa in approximately 5 hours. So from the crew of Apollo 10, and goodbye.
Because of Stafford, Young, and Cernan, because of Apollo 10, Apollo 11 stands on 39A, and the countdown is proceeding. Now, a green light for a lunar landing.